Hello and welcome to the first in our webinar series dedicated to Copilot. This webinar is being recorded, and today we're discussing AI in the modern workplace, all about Copilot for Microsoft 365. We're excited to be here and to be speaking with you today on what generative AI can do and how it can transform your business practices. Myself, I'm Richard Akerman. I'm a partner at Valorem Reply, based in Chicago. I've been with the company, I think it's about 13 years now. So a long time here. Hopefully we've had a chance to meet. If we haven't, my email address is there. You can reach me on Teams. Love to be able to chat with you. Today, I'm joined by Caitlin.
Hello. My name is Caitlin Kelly. I'm an adoption change management consultant here with Valorem Reply. So we have a really rich, mature practice of adoption change management to go alongside our technical consultants, project managers, developers, you name it. We make sure that when you implement new tools and technology, that the people are there alongside it. And I can think of no better tool or technology that really requires robust adoption than Copilot. So very, very excited to be here.
And Caitlin and I are in the same room. We're next to each other. So, and we only have a single camera set up. So we are having to slide back and forth. So if you just bear with us whilst we do that. In today's webinar, before we get to our demos of Copilot in action, we'll take a brief look at the history that Copilot, this new product, is built on. Why now is the time to embrace AI in the workplace, and the various Copilots that Microsoft offers. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. So up on the top rail, you can click on the Q&A, post your questions there, and we'll get to them at the end. This webinar is just the first in our series of webinars about Copilot. So today, this is really a Copilot 101. We're going to be looking at how Copilot works, where it gets the information from. We're going to be showing you lots of demos of Copilot in action. But we have other webinars to expand on this topic. So in less than 2 weeks, we have information security and protection. So you can register for that by scanning the QR code or clicking on the link that we posted into the Q&A section. On this webinar, we'll be joined by our security team, who will be talking through all the different things to keep in mind when rolling out Copilot. Following that, we've got enabling Copilot adoption. This is a hugely important topic. We've seen some customers really embrace Copilot, getting a lot of business value from it, but we've also seen a lot that are kind of struggling. They're not getting people to actually start using Copilot, and therefore they're not seeing the return on investment they were expecting to see. So Caitlin will be on that webinar as well. And then in March, we have our final webinar in the series about extending Copilot. And we actually ran this webinar yesterday internally, and it was super exciting to see what we've done, building our own plugin. And we're excited to see what other plugins and the use of Copilot Studio will be out by then. So hopefully we'll have a few customer stories as well in that one. Before we get started, we want to just take a minute to introduce ourselves. So we are Valorem Reply. We're a Microsoft-focused consultancy that prides itself on delivering exceptional modern work solutions, and also in all other parts of the Microsoft stack. So we have a security team. We have a very wide Azure team focused on application building, infrastructure, data, AI. And then though we are particularly focused on the Microsoft stack, we're lucky to be part of the larger Reply group with over 200 individual companies, each with their own specialism. It means that we're in some ways a small company with our focus, but we're lucky to also then be part of this much larger company. And there's actually 15,000 repliers around the globe. Because we have such a close partnership with Microsoft, we've also been lucky enough to be part of the early access program for Copilot. So I've been using Copilot since July. We're also a Jumpstart partner for Copilot. That means we're qualified to deliver the Microsoft-funded Copilot for Microsoft 365 workshop engagements for Art of the Possible and the future workshop for adoption. So basically, we're total Copilot geeks. You're in good hands for this webinar today.
Absolutely. We are total Copilot geeks. So before we get too far into this presentation, we do want to take a pause right here to actually see Copilot in action. So before we hop into generative AI, let's see what it can do by summarizing this presentation before we go any further. So when we hop into PowerPoint, I can see Copilot in my top ribbon. That's going to open up the prompt pane. And then from there, I'm going to be able to ask it to summarize the document. It often gives you prompt suggestions to get started. There's a little button under there that says more prompts, but I know exactly what I want here, so I'm just going to ask it to summarize the document. From there, we can see that it's scanning the presentation. It's going to start populating a response. As we see, it's sort of slowly going, slowly giving me more information. When it finishes, one of the things I love the most is that it's going to give me some reference points into each of the bullet points it made. So that way I know that where it's exactly pulling from. And as we can see, it's not a one-for-one match of the agenda, right? It's pulling from everything that we're going to be talking about and everything that I asked it for. So generating content from my prompt, leveraging my data and what's available to it. So that's a little bit of Copilot. So we've seen it in action. We see what it can do. Let's take a quick step back. We wanted to start with this introduction webinar on AI because the words generative AI have been thrown around a lot in recent years. It's been a real main topic of discussion for, at least the past year or two. But there's also a lot of mystery surrounding generative AI, particularly how it will affect day-to-day business across industries. Artificial intelligence, even though it feels really new, has actually been around for nearly a century. The mechanical brain was invented in 1932. So technically it's a translator, but it did have a memory for dictionary entries, had a keyboard for entering words, had a search mechanism, really one of the earliest and kind of most consequential forms of AI. From there, we just had major advancement after major advancement in machine learning and understanding what we really define as artificial intelligence. So that's understanding the rules for language, the patterns and objects associated, the context in which those patterns exist, things like neural networks, syntactic structures. All of this work done decades ago has become the foundation to the tools that we use today. So after a lot of this foundational work, our modern AI tools started to take shape. And so that's where we start to get into the fun world of generative AI. So it's moving from understanding the patterns to generating new patterns. And you'll recognize some of these names on the right-hand side there, like GPT, DALL-E, and of course we have Microsoft Copilot. So that's great, but what makes generative AI tick and why is it so transformational? Well, generative AI can create content based on a prompt or a query. So it's using the underlying large language models, which have been trained on billions of words, to identify patterns and structures within existing data to then generate new and original content. So it's leveraging all the information it's trained on. It's understanding things like your tone, your sentiment, the summary of the question by using the syntax from the AI models that we just discussed. So it's going to take your prompts, it's going to break it into patterns or tokens, and then it's going to return content based on what it found in relation to that prompt. So really, the models are combing through all of the information fed to it to create an output that really makes sense. So it's incredibly exciting, but you're probably wondering, how does all of that generative AI fit into a workplace? And how does it fit into what me and my team members are doing every single day? Well, we can take a look at how people are working today. So according to the 2023 Work Trend Index annual report, people are really struggling. 64% of employees reported that they struggle to find time to complete their work, and that they're experiencing 3 times the amount of meetings and calls since February 2020. So really, there's too much work, and then there's too much in the way of getting work done. But then when it comes to AI, it does, studies do say that 70% of people said that people feel comfortable delegating tasks to AI to lighten their workload. And leaders are interested in AI to boost productivity rather than reduce headcount. So if you look at the numbers as a whole, there's a real story being told here. Using AI can help free up employees to do the work that matters, the work that brings passion, that leads to innovation, and that really pushes boundaries. So that's all great, and there's all fantastic reasons to begin thinking of AI, but why bring it into your workplace? Think about how your employees are currently using their technology. These days, there are so many applications out there to complete all sorts of tasks. And when they're used to their fullest, the potential feels really limitless. But what if your employees are not using them to the fullest? Studies show that information workers are only using 13% of the functionality within Office applications. So we have these incredible apps, but maybe not the skills to understand how to use them more. So that begs a lot of questions. What are the barriers to accessing the power behind Office applications? Do people not know formulas in Excel to help them work more efficiently? Are people overwhelmed by a blank page on Word or PowerPoint? Do they not know how to adjust those settings or change the design? You know, we cannot be a professional at every single tool, but we can have an assistant who is. So that's really where Copilot's here to help. Employees can delegate tasks to AI to lighten their more mundane workloads, to then leave room for creativity. And on the same token, Copilot can take natural language and use the Office applications to a higher degree, increasing your use and efficiency while then making space for innovation. So overall, it's really improving your return on investment.
And that's where Microsoft's AI lineup comes into play. So let's start with the personal version of Microsoft Copilot. Formerly known as Bing Chat, Copilot is powered by GPT-4, OpenAI's most capable model. This is what gives it the ability to reason over data. Copilot offers AI-powered web search and answers, complete with citations so you can verify the answers. So this is very similar and built on the same technology as ChatGPT. So you can ask Copilot, perhaps give me 10 ideas for a party this weekend, and it'll give you that, and you can refine it and maybe say you want, it's pretty cold here. You want 10 ideas for a party inside, or you want 10 ideas for, maybe it's a 7-year-old's birthday. As you refine down, it can give you the better responses. Then there's the enterprise version, formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise. Copilot Pro adds commercial data protection. So what this means is that your data, the organization data, won't be used to train the models. And for most organizations, this is a really important version of Copilot, and we'd suggest rolling it out completely across the organization, because it's included in Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 and F3, as well as some of the other licenses. And it actually goes into general availability from tomorrow. So really, everyone in an organization should be using this. It needs a little bit of awareness around it. One of the maybe good ways to do that is perhaps with a campaign of asking Copilot what are 10 ways to use it. And then getting even more advanced is Copilot for Microsoft 365. And this really takes it to a whole new level. It has all the capabilities of Copilot, plus so much more. It has the powerful GPT large language model. It has the AI-powered web search and answers, but it doesn't stop there. Copilot is built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to enterprise-grade security, privacy, identity, compliance, and responsible AI. So it's enterprise ready. This means Copilot inherits your existing Microsoft 365 security policies, and your data is logically isolated and protected within your Microsoft 365 tenant, and it's always within your control. It means that Copilot has access to the work data that you have access to. So the Word documents, PowerPoint files, Teams meetings, and emails. And it brings Copilot into your Office applications. So a lot of our demo is going to be focused on this version of Copilot, the Copilot for Microsoft 365. It launched on November 1st, so just at the start of this month. Hugely beneficial. But there are other versions of Copilot as well. There's also Copilot for Sales and Copilot for Service, which will be suitable for specific roles. So they give you everything that Microsoft 365 gives you, plus for the sales version, access into your CRM, so Dynamics 365 or Salesforce. And for the service version, access also into D365, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Zendesk, and others. It doesn't even stop there. There are specific Copilots for GitHub, which is great for developers to code, for security, for Power Platform. And we can add Copilots to custom applications with Azure OpenAI services. But they're all topics for a different webinar. Today, we are focusing on unleashing creativity and unlocking productivity within Copilot for Microsoft 365. So let's take a closer look at Copilot. Simply put, Copilot is a new way to work. We saw at the beginning of the webinar that Copilot can exist in your Office applications, and you can easily prompt it with natural language. So, we can ask it to summarize this presentation. It understands the context behind the prompt, so to summarize it about the presentation, and it's able to gather the necessary materials. So as we saw before, generative AI, it takes the natural language of the request that the large language models are built on. It identifies the sort of patterns and tokens within that. And then Copilot now adds added context, and it takes the context of the Microsoft 365 apps that you have, and then also the Microsoft Graph. So the Microsoft Graph is, it's been around for about 10 years. It's really beneficial for how search works in Microsoft 365. You might have used something like Delve before, which was a way of sort of showing what the graph can do. And basically, the graph sits behind Microsoft 365, and it knows how everything is connected. So it knows how I'm connected to Caitlin. It knows all of my other colleagues in Reply. It knows that we've worked together on this PowerPoint file. It knows the meetings we've been in. And it knows how sort of what files out of the hundreds of thousands of files we've got access to, which files are closer to me, which are on a certain topic. And it's really beneficial for then Copilot to make Copilot a lot smarter in terms of the data it has access to. Okay, so bear with me just on this one slide before I hand it back over to Caitlin. I would just like to try and explain, how does Copilot work under the bonnet? So this is as technical as we are going to get in this webinar. Later webinars, I'm sure we can delve into some of these topics in a lot more detail, but I just want to sort of try and explain how the pieces are working. So in the top left, we have our Microsoft 365 apps, so Word, Excel, Teams, PowerPoint. In the middle, we have Copilot, our orchestration engine that does all the sort of magic. Over on the right-hand side, you've got the large language model. So GPT-4, so this is very, very similar to what ChatGPT is using. And then down on the bottom left, you've got the Microsoft Graph. So that's what I was just explaining, that knows about all of your documents, your meetings, everything you have access to, and only what you have access to it. So it also does all of the security, making sure you can only see your data, the data in the organization that you have access to. So what happens when you ask Copilot to do something? So if I asked Copilot to maybe create a presentation based on the last 2 weeks project updates for Project Unicorn, for Aperture Inc., focusing on the Teams and email, it would take that prompt from the application, it would take it through into the orchestration engine, it would ground it into the graph, and it would try and hydrate it with additional information to make sense of that. So to make sense of the context I'm asking for, the relevance of the request, it would also do some safety and security checks. So I actually can't ask Copilot to give me payroll information, even if I've got an Excel file with that information. But in the case of my example, what it would do is it would look for Project Unicorn, and it would almost kind of do a search for Project Unicorn. It would look for Aperture Inc. It would pull back all of the emails and Teams messages and all of the information that's been happening on that project for that client over the last 2 weeks, bring all of that to, sort of the bigger response, and then send it over to the large language model. The large language model, it also has the responsible AI built into it, so how it was trained. So it won't answer if I've asked it, give me 10 reasons how to rob a bank. And if you incidentally do happen to ask it that, you will need to start a new chat, because it'll keep thinking that you're asking questions in the context of the previous one, and it'll stop kind of answering you. So the large language model then takes my original request, checks it, and then basically generates the response. So it'll start writing the content around what's been happening on that project, comes up with the great response, writes it all for me. That then, from the large language model, gets sent back through the orchestration engine, back to the graph again for some additional post-processing. That's where additional context is added to it, maybe sort of who the certain users are. There's also some additional safety checks just to make sure what the LLM created meets the sort of guidelines. And then if it's happy, that response then starts to be written out into the application, which we'll see in a moment. We'll see that working. Wow, it's quite a lot that it does. That's the magic behind it. Hopefully I explained that okay. If you do have any questions, though, do post them in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard. It is really complex, and looking at that diagram can feel really overwhelming, but thank you for taking us through sort of how it works and where it's going in that diagram. So now that we understand kind of how it works in theory under the bonnet, as you said, but what are the practical uses? So identifying high value use case scenarios is a real key into understanding the business value. So taking a look at some places where employees need help, Microsoft's identified 3 real key pillars. First, there is the broken meeting. So as we saw, people are in 3 times the amount of calls and meetings, and we can't be everywhere at once. And because we're probably already multitasking, it's hard to pay attention. It's hard to grab really comprehensive notes and participate. And it's even harder to catch up if you had to miss. And then there's the information labyrinth. So there can be so much out there that it's hard to find the right information. You have conversations happening in multiple locations, maybe back and forths on long email threads. You've got chats, you've got channel conversations, all leading to confusion. And then finally, you have this blank page staring you in the face. Here's where you have to start creating from scratch, but you don't have the time. You're overworked, you're multitasking, and now you can't even feel inspired to start on that page and get the really fun work done. So that's where employees are struggling, but now, we need to know who can benefit from Copilot. The short answer is really everyone. You can identify use cases across so many departments in your organization. The specific use cases between HR and IT, for example, are always going to be different because they're inherently different roles, but that's the beauty of Copilot and generative AI. Personally, I know PowerPoint and Word really well, but I cannot make a pivot table in Excel, nor do I know a lot of formulas. So that's where I struggle, and that's a use case that, my time gets eaten up. So one of the best Copilot use cases for me is in Excel. And then on the same token, someone who maybe doesn't specialize in creating presentations can take a Word outline into a PowerPoint presentation really quickly and start going from there. Because of the foundation in natural language, everyone and anyone can use Copilot.
So let's get started and take a look at some of those high-value use cases. And I want to start with a video from Microsoft which showcases Copilot in Teams.
Back from vacation and way behind on our marketing video. Let's see if Copilot can help catch me up. Okay, down here, this little spot has some quick, helpful prompts. I need highlights from the past 7 days. And okay, cool. Looks like we still need logo approved. And okay, this script one is important to me. Click the little citation number, jumps me direct to the message. Highlighted in red there too. Pretty quick way to get caught up. That's what Copilot can do for you.
And it's not just in Teams. Let's now see some day in the life of demos for Copilot across the Office applications.
Great. Thank you, Richard. As we saw, Copilot can be used by anyone in an organization. I do love that video from Microsoft, seeing how to use it quickly in Teams. But we want to take a look at what the day in the life might look like for people in different departments. So starting off with someone from human resources. So from creating a new job posting all the way through new hire orientation, Copilot can help complete a large overarching task by assisting with all of the small tasks throughout the day. So in our example, our HR office worker needs to hire a front-end engineer. So first, they need to create the posting, they need to find the best candidates, they need to create interview questions, conduct interviews, draft an offer letter, create a new hire onboarding packet, right? All of this can be done with the help of Copilot across Office applications, taking a really large job and helping you along the way. To start, we want to create a job posting. So starting from scratch, we're back to that blank page syndrome. How do you even begin to draft a job posting? Well, we can ask our assistant and head into Word. When opening Word, we can see the Copilot in the top ribbon like we did with PowerPoint, but it's also there to prompt me when I open a blank page. So as an HR worker focused on filling a senior front-end engineer role, I start by asking Copilot to draft a job posting with just a few key requirements. So I'm looking at 5 years of experience, maybe a technical degree, maybe some consulting experience as well. And then I want to see how it populates. So you can see it's starting, it's going to start producing everything based on, as we saw Richard going through the graph, going through all the context. So here we go. It's starting to populate. I've got some titles, which I like. So, it's already organizing it in a nice, pleasing way. And it's got some good information on there. I can see some of the requirements hit what I asked for. I do want to make sure that I'm offering a few more specific things for our organization, like a 401k benefits matching. I also noticed that the email address on there isn't a real email address, but that's the beauty of Copilot. It understood that pattern and created one. So I'll ask it to replace it with an actual email address that I want on there. So this is where the sort of refining comes in. You've got the generic prompt, and now I can add more specifics. So it's repopulating now. I'll notice that it's not exactly the same. So we don't have the bullet points anymore. But again, a great example of Copilot is creating new things. Everything isn't going to be 100% exactly the same every time you prompt it. But overall, this looks really great. So what I can do now is I can send it over to the hiring manager for, the engineering role. They can look over everything. But essentially something that would have taken 30 to 60 minutes of my day has now just taken a couple of minutes. So that's a great day in the life of, an HR worker taking that one task in Word. But let's take another role looking over at IT. So similar to HR, an IT administrator can take a large job that can be broken down into multiple applications and tasks. So in this particular example, we're looking to roll out multi-factor authentication for an organization. So from creating the project plan, meeting with the team, brainstorming ideas, taking those ideas and summarizing them, presenting them, creating a change management plan, all of these tasks can leverage an AI assistant. But I want to take a look at one particular use, which is in Whiteboard. I'm super excited about the developments in Whiteboard. It's come along really quickly, and it's a really extraordinary application now. And then to be able to add Copilot in it only makes it better. So I've brainstormed all these ideas with my colleagues, throwing out stickies, but now it's time to actually organize this and understand what's happening for the CIO. Within Copilot in the bottom ribbon, I can ask it to categorize my notes. I want it to do everything for me and see how it's going to organize them in a way that's easier to access. So immediately it's added titles across the different topics. It's changed the coloring of them. So on a quick glance, it's super easy. From there, I can do kind of whatever I want. It's done that bit where now I've got this beautiful idea. I can also ask it to do a little bit more. So I want to summarize what's happened in this brainstorming session into maybe a different sort of language, something easy I can send to my CIO. What it's actually now done is gone into Loop. And for those who aren't familiar with Loop, Loop is Microsoft's new note-taking tool. You can make workspaces, pages, collaboration spaces within it. It's a really fantastic application. So what I saw it did is it created a Loop component directly within this whiteboard. I can see the summary, the ideas generated, the themes. It also had a screenshot of all of the stickies at the bottom. So now what I can do with this is I can take this Loop component and I can stick it in a team or a channel to make it more visible. I can, invite people to it, share the link to it. I can just copy and paste the material on there and maybe stick it in an email. There are a lot of options here, but the core idea is that my team and I were able to spend energy and brain space on the important parts of the project, the brainstorming, and then I let Copilot run with some of the more menial but still necessary aspects of the project. Working together with Copilot is really where you unleash a whole new level of productivity. But I do want to talk about another particular use case. Copilot can assist everyone within an organization, and this can affect leaders as well. So in our day in the life for executives, we're going to be initiating and implementing agile project management. A leader can catch up on the latest progress regarding the move. They can review announcements from last quarter, revise and work on a speech for an all-company meeting, adjust a presentation, meet with the team, leverage Copilot to take the notes for the meeting. And then after everything's all said and done, writing, an address to the entire company that our leader needs to draft in Outlook. So let's see what drafting that email can look like with Copilot. Within New Outlook, I see the Copilot icon in my top ribbon of a new email, but I can also start drafting with Copilot right from the start, a little bit like how I did with Word. I'm going to go ahead and prompt Copilot to draft a thank you email with some information about Agile project management. It's going to be a relatively short prompt, but one of the things that I really like within Outlook is that it's more than just drafting an email. There's actually a little filter bar at the bottom that I can see, and I can click on that to change how this email looks. So if I want to be more formal because I'm a leader, I can change that tone. I can make it long, which is going to tell Copilot that it has more room to add more detail, which I'm hoping is what happens with the Agile project management portion. But we generate, we're going to see what Copilot comes back with in Outlook. And great, I can tell from the start that it does look a little bit more formal. I want to thank you all. In this meeting, we discussed the benefits of project management. I can see that it did add some of the key principles. So that adding that long clarity there went ahead and allowed it to continue to populate maybe, eight benefits there. It's a very nice email. It's formal. That's great. So I want to keep it. But another thing that you can do with Copilot and Outlook is coaching. So whether you've drafted it from Copilot or whether you've drafted it yourself, you can leverage the coaching, which is going to go comb through your email and look for things like tone, clarity, enthusiasm, specificity, seeing where you can add little bits to improve your email. So I see here that I could be more enthusiastic. That's fair. I could, make it more exciting. One really nice thing is considering the reader's perspective. So I said that we discussed the benefits, but maybe I should say we introduced the benefits, especially for people who weren't there to actually hear all of that themselves. Apparently, this email also sounds vague and general, which is fair. I did ask Copilot to draft it, and it's kind of on me to add a lot more of those specifics to my organization. So really like what it told me to do. I don't want to take all of the coaching, but I do like the idea of changing my language to reintroduce the benefits of Agile project management. So now I've got this great email. It's a great summary. All I've got to do is add the distribution list, add the recording and the presentation, and then that task that could have taken a while was done in just a couple minutes. So that was my day as an executive, finishing off all of my tasks with Copilot and Outlook. So we understand where people are struggling. We've identified use cases. Now we've seen it in action and how it can be transformative and a really everyday part of someone's work. But it's not just about offering the tool. What's critical is continuing to identify success and metrics to improve use over time. For example, once you've enabled Copilot, you have to, ask, are people in less meetings? Are the meetings shorter and are there more recaps being used? Are people spending less time in email? Are they leveraging the Outlook summarizing their documents and emails? Are they using successful prompts, meaning they aren't needing to refine as much? Are they editing documents less? Are they spending less time in applications? All of these can indicate growing success with Copilot, and it's vital to continue to monitor these questions and metrics. And there are a lot of ways to monitor them, whether you're looking at the, soon to be released Copilot adoption dashboard, whether you're sending sentiment analysis surveys that you can, leverage through Viva Pulse. There's a whole bevy of options. And we will go into all of these adoption tools in our Enabling Copilot Adoption webinar. You can trust me on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Caitlin, for that amazing demo. And just before we take your questions, and remember, you can click on the Q&A icon just at the top to ask your question. Let me just recap on some of the things that we've seen in our webinar today. So Caitlin explained to us how generative AI is built on over 100 years of research and work on AI. We saw how employees are overworked and overwhelmed, and why Copilot is a great assistant. And then we saw the demos. So we saw Copilot in Teams, in Word, writing the job advert, in Whiteboard, wow, categorizing and summarizing the information there, and in Outlook. And we just shared why we need to monitor the success of Copilot and help with the adoption. This is a huge change for people. Some people are going to embrace it. Other people are not going to adopt it as well. It's as big a change as when we first started getting people to use Teams, or even when Office 365 first came out. So it needs that extra work to drive the adoption. So with that, it's time for questions. And can we both fit in now?
Yeah, I think so. Bring us both to the screen.
Perfect. There we are.
So we do have a couple of good questions here. One of the big ones, we're about to communicate Bing Chat Enterprise. Will it literally change branding tomorrow?
So officially the GA release is tomorrow. If you go to copilot.microsoft.com, it is already called Copilot with Bing Chat. Copilot in Windows as well is called Copilot. The launch date is tomorrow. I don't know if it will literally change tomorrow. We have to wait and see as well, but it certainly will be within the next few days. So to simplify the naming now, everything is Copilot.
It's a great question. Would Copilot ever allow for integration of data from third parties like Zoom or Miro?
I believe so. I mean, we can already, our extending Copilot webinar is about the extensions. So you can have the graph extensions, so you can connect today, public websites, you can connect SAP ServiceNow into the graph, anything that appears in search into that. And then you can also create plugins. So there will be a bunch of plugins created by third parties. So SAP SuccessFactors are writing a great one to allow you to book vacation time and ask about your 401k. So Adobe have one. So Miro would be able to have one for that. There's nothing stopping Zoom having one. I don't know, it's going to bring some of the data in, and you'll see in that webinar how Copilot decides kind of where to go for its response, basically based on what you're asking. So it could, in theory, work with Zoom in a similar way. I don't think it would be as effective as it will be fully integrated into Teams.
Do really want to address a really great question here about various partners in the ecosystem who want to be able to help drive adoption with users, but may not have the hands-on technology. I do just want to highlight that we've been, we've had access to Copilot for months now, and all of the demonstrations that you did see came from our own environment.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we're lucky about at Reply, in that we're a couple of hundred people in the Valorum team, but because we are part of this 15,000 person company Reply, we had the early access program ourselves. So we had it, along with some of our big clients, really, really early on. So we were able to use it and have the training and support from Microsoft that some of the early adopters had. And then we did join the Jumpstart program with some of the other partners, but I know actually a lot of other partners, they only got it basically a week before launch, so the last week of October. But there's a lot of information out there. Microsoft have done a fantastic job of providing the training and providing all the information for the different applications. And we didn't actually show Excel today. Excel, it wasn't even working in the middle of October, and just seeing how fast the functionality in Excel has improved over the last 6 weeks. It's really exciting to see that progress.
Great question. How do you frame the return on investment and payback period estimates for a large Copilot purchase?
Do you want to take that one? Or?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that's really beneficial to do is when you're identifying the use cases in those really high value scenarios is to understand where people are spending their time. So if you have salaried employees who are spending, a certain amount of hours a week on tasks that can be completed in minutes by Copilot, you then add up those weeks over time, over the whole year. How much money is actually going toward completing those tasks that could be completed by AI? And then, that's just one particular, user. Multiply that by the amount of users in your organization who are going to be leveraging the tool. And then suddenly it becomes pretty clear what the sort of the value is of leveraging Copilot over, those hours and hours of time.
And we're running projects like this right now. So we have some clients that have immediately purchased thousands of licenses after the initial sort of 300 that they purchased, and we're helping them roll it out in the adoption and the training and awareness piece across the organization. But then we've got other organizations where they're trying to decide and make the business decision. And what we're doing is a combination of looking at the data of usage, some surveys, and actually speaking to different teams. So we see typically, sales, marketing, legal get ginormous benefits from it, as long as they've been properly trained and are actually using and adopting it. And then we can put a value per role against that. And we're helping write the business case for lots of organizations to make that purchasing decision on, do they move to 3,000 licenses? Do they move to 30,000 licenses? Often it could be a case of, there are certain roles where the for Microsoft 365, which retails at $30 per user per month, that version is the best version for them. But the included version that doesn't have access to your own data is suitable for the rest of the organization. And then maybe some of the other co-pilots for really specific roles. So we did the same thing at Reply. Most of our engineering community, we were more focused on GitHub. Similarly, with some of the creative team, we had to choose as well kind of who were the initial 300 people that we gave access to.
Another great question. I love this. It sounds like Copilot may pull data partially based on